In this episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks live stream, we have a very special guest from AMD here to join us for a little chat about all things Ryzen and Radeon. Next. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters. It's been a minute. Dave Altavilla here for Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks live stream. And with me are a couple of fine fellas. My compatriot, Marco Chiappetta, who is just looking absolutely stunning today in his GPU-adorned office. See that behind him? Look at that. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing all right. Welcome to the first stream from the new office.
Excellent. Yeah, and you got some action figures, some heroes over your shoulder there as well. Looking dialed in. Love it. And another guy that's dialed in is this guy right here in the bottom of the Brady Bunch. He should be on the top, but we haven't figured out how to flip that around. Dave McAfee from AMD, Corporate VP and General Manager, Client Channel Business at AMD. That's a lot, Dave. That's a mouthful.
It's been a lot the past couple of weeks. Honestly, it's been maybe some of the most exciting weeks we've had in a very long time.
I bet. Yeah, you guys are firing on all cylinders, whether it be CPUs, GPUs, integrated APUs. I mean, just a relentless onslaught of silicon from you folks since CES, and love it. Love to see it. Keeps guys like us busy. Let's start with you though, Dave. So folks that, you're a pretty famous guy, but some folks may not know what you do at AMD. You are in charge of the client channel business for AMD. What does that entail?
Yeah, so I run our Ryzen CPU business and our Radeon graphics business. And so, everybody who's a DIYer or buying a pre-built system from a system builder, we work with all of those partners to make sure that they've got the right products and the right combinations to build for whatever they do, whether they're a gamer or a creator or a developer, all the way from our Ryzen APUs that go into our desktop sockets, all the way up to our Threadripper products, and then all of our Radeon and Radeon Pro products as well. So kind of the whole gamut. If you're a high performance user and you're building a desktop system, that's my team that's helping put all of that in place.
Excellent. Wow, you got all the fun stuff. I will say that, at least for geeks like us. Yeah, absolutely. Welcome to the stream again. It's been a while since we've had you on, but you're almost a regular now, so it's great to have you with us. We have a lot to chat about today. You guys have been absolutely relentless in execution of multiple different chip offerings, desktop, mobile, and high-end workstation, and then of course graphics as well, graphics and gaming. So we're going to get to all of that in a little bit. But Marco, why don't you lay down the ground rules for folks who are joining us on the live stream? We've got a couple of different channels we're streaming over, YouTube, X, and LinkedIn as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So for everyone that may be new here, we're not going to give any gotchas to David. We're here to have a cordial conversation. So any troll comments, anything like that, we're just going to ignore. And I feel like I have to say this because the X audience is booming right now. We're approaching 900 X viewers right now. Unfortunately, we're streaming through StreamYard, and the live chat being fed to us is through the YouTube channel. So if you want to interact with David live, please head over to youtube.com/hothardware, where you can participate in the live chat and we can have a more interactive experience here. Other than that, we have tons to cover. I think that's about it. So we should probably get started.
Yes, that's true. Unfortunately, we haven't figured out how to integrate X into StreamYard. So hop on over to YouTube if you want to chat with Dave, and we will field questions from the audience. So please, folks, feel free to chime in with your burning questions, and we'll fire them at Dave, and he'll answer whatever he can, and what he can't or isn't allowed to answer, he won't. So there. Does that sound like a plan, Dave? We get you on the hot seat. Is that okay?
Let's get into it.
All right, awesome. Marco, why don't you? I know we've got a couple here. Why don't you tee up what's top of mind for you?
So since the Ryzen 9 9950X 3D just launched this week, let's start with something related to that chip. So you guys have had a few generations of 3D V-cache enabled processors, but you did some different things with the Ryzen 9000 series X3D with how that cache is bonded and sort of flipped over under the CCD. Can you explain some of the thought process that went into those decisions and what it enables with these latest Ryzen processors?
Sure. I think the truth is when we look back at the 7000 series Ryzen X3D processors, the way that the stacking process technology worked is that the CCD would be on the bottom, the SRAM would get put on top. And so effectively you would end up with a situation where, that bond between the two pieces of silicon would almost create a bit of a thermal blanket or a thermal barrier that didn't allow the chip to dissipate heat as effectively as possible. And that's why in the 7000 series generation, you saw some limitations around overclocking, higher temperatures on some of those processors, as well as a bigger delta from non-stacked to stacked products. If you look at, say, a 7800X or 7700X versus a 7800 X3D, that's really because of the way that stacking operation took place and the temperature implications of having the SRAM on top of the CCD. Now, in the 9000 series generation, we're moving to our second generation of V-cache technology, which effectively flips the stacking process upside down. The SRAM is directly attached to the substrate. The CCD gets put on top, so it is directly interfacing with the thermal solution on the processor and in the system, and it allows much, much more effective heat dissipation through the chip, keeps temperatures lower, it allows frequencies to go much, much higher, and actually makes the performance very close to what you see with a non-stacked product. So it's been a really significant advantage in terms of building a great X3D product, a product that performs kind of with no compromises. That's really what the second gen V-cache has allowed us to do. And then as you look at the 9950 X3D, this is where, we paired together, just like in our prior generations with our two CCD products, one stacked and one unstacked CCD. And this is the thing that I've gotten a lot of questions about, ever since we introduced the first generation of our Ryzen 9 X3D processors. Why is only one CCD stacked and one unstacked? Well, the truth is lots of applications really have a preference for one type of die or the other. When you have stacked CCDs on both, or if you build a product with stacked CCDs in both locations, you would end up with a massive amount of cache. However, there is overhead that goes along with keeping that cache coherent across the CCDs, which results in a little bit of a performance penalty. And the truth is there's really not that many applications, whether you're talking about the gaming domain or the creator domain, that can take advantage of stacked CCDs in both locations. And so really from the standpoint of cost for the end user, cost benefit for the end user, in this generation, we looked at all options. And again, the one stacked and one unstacked CCD was the optimal configuration to deliver best performance to the end user, whether they're gaming or creating or whatever they're doing, without it unnecessarily driving up the cost of the product, so that we can offer it at a reasonable price.
Awesome. Yeah, that's one of the things that I don't want to derail the conversation, but having just handled a ton of launches the last couple of months, to see what's happened with your competitors in the GPU space, and then to contrast with AMD, your current flagship GPU and flagship CPU are, $699 or $599 on down, right? It's these really competitive, highly competitive products in terms of the Ryzen 9950 X3D, arguably the fastest desktop processor ever. Like, I really love the chip, gave it an editor's choice, but it's really nice to see, the kind of balance that AMD struck with both of these launches, to have such strong competitive offerings without these, insanely inflated MSRPs. Good job.
Well, thank you for that, and thank you for the Editor's Choice Award. It really does mean a lot to see everybody recognize the value of these products. I think the truth is, if you look back to the very beginning of Ryzen was a brand that was built around providing excellent value for the end user and more for your money. And I think we've really stayed true to that all the way through to the Zen 5 generation and the products that we launched last week, like the 9950X3D. Actually, that was this week, wasn't it, man?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. It has been a blur the past couple of weeks, so apologies for that. But we've really tried to stay true to that promise to end users that Ryzen is all about getting more for your money. And frankly, we're trying to build the same thing with Radeon. The launch of the 9070 XT series and 9070 represents a step in that same direction to ensure that we're bringing great gaming experiences, 4K gaming experiences to everybody, and really getting to a point where Radeon consistently stands for more for your money and bringing great value to the end user. We think that's the right approach, and really that's what we're going to continue doing in the future.
Yeah, I'm actually sharing. Thanks for that, David. I'm actually sharing some benchmark scores here off on the right of the screen, and yeah, class leading CPU throughput here, and then some serious game chops as well. If we slip over to the gaming side of things, that's wait a minute, hang on, that's not the gaming stuff. Let me get that right there. Look at Marco's beautiful pictures, by the way.
Unbelievable. The photography is just next level. Unbelievable.
Well manicured hands there too, buddy. You're a good hand model. So right up there in the mix with the fastest chips in terms of gaming, but also a ton of multi-core throughput for processing.
Back to the earlier question about the X3D or second gen Vcache stacking process. I think one of the things that has done more than anything else is, even if you look at that 7000 series generation, there was a bit of separation between a 7800 X3D and a 7950 X3D, where that single CCD product was just a bit better. And I think that what we see in this generation is across a pretty broad suite of games, and it's a close battle now. It's almost a toss-up between those two, where, because you're able to run at a bit higher frequency with the 9950 X3D, it really trades blows with the 9800 X3D. And I've got to say, this week I've gotten so many messages from our motherboard partners about what they've been able to do overclocking the 9950 X3D as well. Again, one of the huge benefits that this second gen Vcache stacking process brings is it allows much more flexibility in overclocking, and the records they've been able to break and frequencies that they've been able to hit with the 9950 X3D on their motherboards have really been mind-boggling. So it's really been exciting to see how that new technology with second gen Vcache translates to all sorts of benefits in the product performance and capabilities.
Yeah, great stuff. Marco, we played a little bit. Oops, let me get that off the screen. Go back to let me remove. Oh boy, my mixing chops aren't what they used to be. We did dabble a little bit in overclocking. What did you find with that chip in that regard?
Yeah, I didn't go nuts. Unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, I'm the most conservative guy in the universe in terms of the benchmarks and stuff I post. So I want people that read it to be able to replicate it or potentially replicate it and see how they compare to our data. Yeah. So I'm using, an older 240 millimeter Corsair liquid cooler, and enabling PBO or Auto OC, or even like PBO plus the full Expo profile to run the memory a little faster. You'll see a couple percentage points improvement. It was actually enough to push the 9950 X3D to the top spot in some tests where, Intel's competitive offering sat in that spot before. But if you have more powerful cooling and you're willing to, tweak the dials more, it's got a, first, this is the first generation that lets you do it with X3D, right? The 7000 series, you couldn't do this stuff with. And yeah, it's not quite like a non 3D Vcache enabled chip, but it's up there. Like, you can definitely wring some extra performance out of it.
Yeah, I think you mentioned PBO or Precision Boost Overdrive and Expo. Those are a couple of the technologies that we've really been trying to advance with each generation, because unlike manual overclocking, where it's really you're kind of wandering into territory where where things are more in your hands. Sure, you have more flexibility, but there's also more risk in terms of putting settings in place that make your system unstable. The beauty with PBO is it really still uses the system management unit within the processor to control all the parameters around voltage, frequency, temperature, push things a little bit higher up to the maximum limits of the board, like taking advantage of many of these X series motherboards, the X870 boards that have, I don't know, things like higher EDC, TDC limits, things like that, where they can deliver more current and power into the processor. That just simply feeds into the system management unit and allows the processor to still stay under a very controlled performance envelope, but just take advantage of everything that you've purchased as a part of that build and just max it out in every capability.
Yeah, I'm actually streaming this feed brought to you by a 9950X.
Appreciate that, Dave. Thank you.
I did not click the PBO button because I like ultimate stability, and not that it would give me too much instability, but I go on the side of conservative. But it is nice to have that extra performance in the can at the click of a button. Yeah, for sure.
I don't know if I'm going to lose any geek cred, but I'm still rocking my Threadripper 2990X. System's been so stable, I don't want to take it out of production.
It looks like you're due for an upgrade, Marco.
Yeah, like it's not like I don't have other hardware here. It's just it's working for me. I don't want to mess with my setup.
Exactly.
Hey, Dave, I'm simple. I like small form factor builds. I've had like my go-to was in the AM4 generation, a 5700G. 65-watt processor, 3 display outputs, just super small, super quiet. And then recently upgraded to an 8700G, which again, great performance, cool and quiet, great display capabilities and multimedia capabilities. So it's, lots of flexibility for whatever you need. I think my 8700G probably affects my electricity bills a little bit less than your Threadripper, Marco.
Probably a little bit. I let the wife handle the bills, whatever.
I live in Texas, so in the summertime it gets hot no matter what. I don't need the extra heat in the room.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah. Hey, Dave. Well, let's stay on topic of 9950X 3D and just I guess high core count chips in general. There's been some concern, a little bit of concern in enthusiast circles that AMD may be stuck, if you will, at 16 cores maximum on its consumer desktop processors since like the very first generation. Do you think that's something that may need to be addressed moving forward, or should consumers look to Threadripper if they need to get more, higher core count? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think you have to start by looking at the application ecosystem and what types of applications really take advantage of the higher core count processors that we have in our portfolio. You look at those 16 core processors, and across most applications, whether you're a developer, whether you're compiling software, whether you're doing 3D modeling and rendering, et cetera, there's a handful of workloads, or I guess you could call it application verticals, which really take advantage of what a higher core count processor offers. In the 7000 series generation, we brought back our Threadripper product line in addition to the Threadripper Pro, and maybe that's worth talking about for just a moment, because in the past, I guess you would have to go back to the 3000 generation and prior. We really maintained two very separate product lines, Threadripper and Threadripper Pro, with different capabilities. That Pro processor really based on highest memory channel count, highest memory capacity, most PCI lanes, for kind of that true professional that needs a absolute best of the best system, server class reliability. All of those things were what Threadripper Pro was all about. And Threadripper was a little bit more in the middle for users that needed higher core count processors who wanted more memory bandwidth and more memory capacity than what they could get with at that point in time, AM4 motherboard. And that's the space that Threadripper occupied in the portfolio. With the 1000 series, we again brought back Threadripper and Threadripper Pro with many of those same distinctions between the two. Pro being 8 memory channels, 128 PCI lanes versus the HEDT boards that are 4 memory channels and a lower PCI lane count. Again, I think that the Threadripper ecosystem is still not at its peak. I think that we continue to see more interest and more boards being built by many of our partners when it comes to looking at the Threadripper platform and the TRX 50 and WRX 90 sockets that are out there. I probably got those wrong, so if I did, excuse me. But both of those platforms in the DDR5 generation really have allowed us to kind of recreate that portion of the ecosystem and allowed us to begin to rebuild there. But I think what's driving that space now is we're seeing a lot of interest in multi-GPU systems for development or inference or training of AI models. Like that has almost become a more important vertical than software development or 3D modeling and rendering. And I think that's going to continue to fuel and drive the growth of that Threadripper ecosystem. If you look at that in an AM5 class of board, I think that the biggest limitation that you run in there is really the ability to have full lane count, full bandwidth, multi-GPU support in those systems. And I think that's where somebody who's an AI developer or a model builder or those types of things would look to that step-up platform that gives them more capabilities to run multi-GPU in parallel that you just can't do on a regular board. So maybe back to the beginning of your question, Dave, is 16 core and the AM5 platform, kind of a point where it's reached a level of stability? Yes, I think 16 core is a great solution for today. I think we see a handful of applications that are emerging that continue to push the envelope in terms of being able to take advantage of more cores. But at the same time, I think we see that AM5 platform and the Threadripper and Threadripper Pro platforms continuing to complement each other for the next couple of years and just build out that range of solutions depending on the price point you're looking for and kind of your core use cases that you really need and care about day in and day out. That's really why we have all three of those tools in the toolbox to help people build the right system for what they need.
Yeah, interesting. We're getting some interesting comments and questions in the chat. And by the way, folks, we are taking note of these and we will circle back on some of the Radeon stuff that's come in. But here's an interesting use case for sure from a developer here. So with respect to security. So, but he runs Linux and Windows VMs for gaming pinned to 3D Vcache CCDs.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Great use case. That's very good.
Well done. Marco,
hey,
what about?
Let me jump in for 1 second.
Yeah.
So first, this stupid thing is that screensaver going to drive you nuts behind me? I didn't realize it was going to kick in.
No, it's fine.
All right. So we have thousands of viewers live on X right now. If you weren't here for the beginning, I just want to reiterate: if you want to interact live, we're not monitoring live chat on X. You have to come over to YouTube. I think there's over 2,000 X viewers at the moment. Come on over to YouTube if you want to interact with Dave live. White Kidney, also your question about 3D Vcache across multiple CCDs. Dave sort of answered that earlier. So when we're done, you can just scrub back to the beginning of the stream to explain why it's only on one CCD in the consumer space. And for people mentioning stock and MSRPs, we're going to get to that later as well. We have a few more questions to kind of run through here. So we're not ignoring you. We're going to get there, I promise.
We have lots of questions from poor Dave. His ears are going to be burning by the time he's done here. Okay. I had a question, and then Marco, I know you've got a bunch too, still on X3D, 9000 series X3D. Dave, just wanted to understand from a demand standpoint what you see. Oh, do we lose Dave?
We might have lost Dave.
We did lose Dave.
So we will riff while Dave reconnects.
Yeah, folks, let me pull up the YouTube as well. David hopefully can hop back in the stream here. I'm going to pull up the YouTube link where I will paste it into the chat so you can join us and interact versus on X. Not that we don't love the X audience. We do. There's David. We're going to add him back to the stage. Hey, buddy.
Sorry about that, guys. That was an errant click there that actually took me out of the chat. Apologies.
Nah, no worries. No worries. All good. It was a moment in time, and that's it. I am pasting into the chat now the YouTube link for folks that want to join us there, where we can monitor comments and questions. So that has been done. So we just did a little bit of housekeeping while you were gone, Dave. No problem at all.
I didn't miss anything important.
Yeah. So let's go back. I was about to tee up a question relative to sales. Ryzen 9 9950X3D, it's a content creation and gaming powerhouse chip. AMD is obviously uniquely catered to a demographic with this, gamers and creators, or creators who game, perhaps, however you want to look at it. How has the market demand for this SKU been, specifically the 9950X3D? Is it way out in front of chips like the 9800X3D, or does that lead the charge? Where do you see demand? Is it how does that shape up?
I guess I would say it's early in the life of the 9950X3D right now. What we saw day one was very strong. I think it was another moment where in the US and really around the world, there were people queuing up to buy the product. We sold out and sold through of so much of the inventory that had been built up, and so really strong day one reaction with the product. I think if you compare that to say our 9950X or even the 7950X3D, the initial reaction was very strong, and the enthusiasm from people building a system around the 9950X3D was really quite strong as well. So I think from our standpoint, early read is very positive on demand for the 9950X3D. Again, we've got a plan to continue to ramp our X3D capacity across both the 8-core offering as well as the higher core count Ryzen 9 products, because we see very strong demand in both the Ryzen 7 space and anticipate strong demand in the Ryzen 9 space as well. I really think in this generation, the 9950X3D is kind of uniquely positioned as that best tool for almost anything that you do with your system. And I don't think you could have said the same thing about the 7950X3D. So I think we're pretty optimistic about how how gamers and creators and developers will all adopt the 9950X3D.
And it's a $699 MSRP. Do I have that right?
That's correct.
Yeah, that's when you think about a top end flagship CPU, that's still a pretty, relatively speaking, a pretty competitive price point. Marco and I remember the days where the top bin CPUs were $1,000, entry point, and clocking in at 700 is still pretty aggressive, I think. So
I know that the X3D products and the X3D stacking process adds a lot of cost to the product as well. And we certainly, try to make sure that even as we build, products that are the best of the best, we're delivering great value for the gamers or creators that are building their systems around that processor.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Marco, what else you got, buddy?
I'm going to actually throw a question. I'm going to pronounce the name wrong, but it's related to a part of the earlier conversation we had. We have a viewer asking, were there any particular hurdles in moving the cache to the underside of the CCD? Any technical challenges there that you can share?
I won't say that there were huge technical challenges to overcome. Now, certainly, it's that process of stacking, and I think if you go back to when we introduced our first gen vCache technology, there's quite a bit of technology around how the SRAM and CCD mate with each other, right? They have to be sort of perfectly paired together, the way the through silicon vias work, the micro bumps to connect the two die together. I mean, it's really planned in concert with each other. And so it was one of those things that as we move from first gen to second gen Vcache, it took quite a bit of development and experimentation to ensure that we really had a process to move that SRAM to the bottom, because we saw the benefits of it, right? We saw the limitations in that first generation with the thermal barrier that's created in that direct copper to copper bond. We knew that this would be a better solution, and that's really what drove our engineering teams to try to build the best possible solution that we could. So I won't say that it was significant technology hurdles that prevented us or got in our way as we progressed towards second gen Vcache. It was really, once that first generation technology had been developed, we understood that there was something much better that we could do here. And that's what our engineers focused on, was just delivering the best solution that we could with X3D. And I think second gen Vcache definitely lives up to that.
Amen. Good stuff. We got some more coming in on the chat, boy. It's firing up now.
Yeah, I just, since we're already on the topic, and Dave sort of you touched on it quickly with the previous question in terms of availability of the chips. When the 9800 X3D hit, they just disappeared immediately. They were tough to get initially. Is AMD doing anything different with the 9950 X3D and 9900 X3D launch to sort of help ensure that consumers that want them can get their hands on them?
I mean, we look at historical trends when we launch a product to ensure that we're putting enough supply into the market to make sure that day one, week one, month one, all have both plenty of stock at launch and then plenty of resupply that's coming after it, to ensure that anybody who wants one, whether that's day one or whether that's 2 weeks after launch, has the opportunity to get their hands on one. And so we work very hard with our supply chain organization and partners around the world, retailers and e-tailers, to make sure that they're pulling enough stock into their region, into their stores, into their distribution centers, all of those things, to make sure that we have plenty of product available. So with X3D as a whole, I think you're right, Marco. The 9800 X3D was fantastic in terms of the initial adoption and just market success we saw with that product. It really took the world by storm, and we've been ever since ramping up our X3D capacity each and every quarter to ensure that we're putting enough product into the market. And I think one of the things that we've talked about before is, with X3D, it is a much longer planning cycle than typical silicon, whereas if you're building a monolithic piece of silicon, a 9700X or something of that nature, you're really only dealing with the lead time of manufacturing that wafer, which could be a 12 or 13 week process. But then when you look at X3D, it's another number of weeks on top of that, where it has to go through secondary processing to stack the two together, to create that assembly and get it put back into the package. So it adds quite a bit of planning time and cycle time to being able to ramp production. Not something where we can turn on a dime, certainly. And I think that's one of the things where we've been very, very diligent in looking at each and every quarter and planning as much capacity as we possibly can, to make sure that we're building enough X3D to satisfy everybody in the world who wants one.
And thank you for that, David. And with that, I will toss in this comment from X, Marco. It does work. StreamYard is pulling in X, and this person right here, Dizzy, I want to say, is running an X3D, 9950 X3D, and happens to live cool.
And to the other X viewers that haven't migrated over or are not interacting, there's a lot of cool information in our chat on YouTube from industry analyst Mike Brazone. If you want to come see some interesting numbers, come hit the YouTube. It's also easy for us to monitor, so come on over to YouTube and like and subscribe and chat there too. Good stuff. So, Dave, do you have another one, or you want me to jump in?
No, dive right in, man.
So we're running out of time. We should probably move to Radeon chat, because what a really exciting launch. There was some discussion around CES as to why you guys didn't talk about it much. Turns out all of the concerns were unwarranted, because wow, the reception for this launch was just awesome. I'm not going to give away any numbers, but if you saw the views on the Radeon article versus some competitive launches that happened around the same time, it's a lot more eyeballs on the Radeon launch.
Yeah.
So I'll just say that. So as we get to this one, is probably going to be a little sticky for you, David. So obviously do what you can. There was a lot of real positive reactions to those sort of sub 600 MSRPs for these GPUs. Can you give a little color as to how you guys come to that decision? Is it strictly just BOM costs and you guys are working a formula, or is there some strategy here and some wiggle room for you guys to price these products?
I think that you have to start with an understanding of how the product performs and how the product performs relative to both our prior generation as well as what the competition is doing. And that's not just raw performance, that's performance as well as performance per dollar. We wanted to make sure, like I said earlier, that with Radeon, we're building a family of products and a consistent promise that we're delivering more to the end user for their dollar, delivering great value and great gaming experiences with every Radeon card. And so like all of those decisions are completely grounded in where the market is today, where the competition is today, where price points are today, and how we deliver on that value proposition to really delight users with the capability that we can provide them at the price point we can enable.
Got it. Awesome. And this might be a little too nerdy for David. If David doesn't answer, we'll follow up with AMD and see if we can get an answer for this one. Multiple people have asked for a single root IO virtualization in the consumer GPUs. Do you know if that's coming? If there's hardware in there to support that on RDNA 4? Or is that something we should push up the line?
RDNA 4 does not support SRIOV. I'm very familiar with the topic there, but that's not a feature that's included in RDNA 4. What you will see in RDNA 4 is sort of that pass-through or one-to-one single virtual function type of operation. If you're using an RDNA 4 GPU in like a container environment or something of that nature, but it is not a multi-tenant, multi-virtual function GPU.
Got it. Perfect. There you go.
David's got full geek. He's got full geek.
Yeah, man. Good stuff. And just sticking with the chat, we have another question asking how the ML training worked with FSR4 for the Radeons. With FSR4, you guys obviously incorporated some AI to improve visual fidelity, whereas previous versions of FSR didn't leverage AI. Could you talk a bit about how that was implemented and how it works?
Yeah, FSR4, I think, is one of the most exciting features that came with the RDNA 4 launch. It has been something that has been in development for a number of years now. We certainly have had our sights set on delivering a massive step forward in terms of capability with FSR4. And, our strategy has really been all the way back to when we introduced FSR 3.1, building that around an upgradable API. So I may take a minute to answer this question, but if you look at this end to end, the technologies like FSR 4, FSR X, let's just call it that for a minute, depend on significant developer adoption. It's a feature that's very deeply integrated into the game engine itself to deliver the right quality, the right frame rates, reduce the artifacts and ghosting, and get to a level of quality and capability that really is excellent. And that's kind of the bar that we have as we go enable those titles. But back in the FSR 3.1 timeframe, we implemented an API that allowed us to add new features into that FSR framework API without redoing the integration with the game developer. And so, one of the things is we launched the product where we have a number of games, a significant number of games. I think it's 30 plus at launch and 75 by the end of the year. All of that is really built on the fact that that integration work happened with RDNA 3.1, and we're using that developer integration and the ability to rapidly migrate that to FSR4 as our way to grow the FSR4 ecosystem very quickly. And we think that's a huge advantage for developers, and it allows us to proliferate the FSR4 or the FSR ecosystem much more quickly than if we were having to brute force through this each and every generation. Now, when it comes to the ML aspects of it, I think that our architects knew that compared to the analytical approaches that had been used in the past, using an ML-based algorithm to do FSR4 was absolutely the answer. And I've watched many of the reviews out there about FSR4 and comparing that to what the competition offers. We think we've done something with FSR4 that stands up very, very nicely to the state of the art in the ecosystem right now. It is something where, again, we've been working for a number of years with a number of game developers to get traces of different aspects of their games, running that through our training algorithms, fine-tuning it, making sure that we really had the right model parameters and weightings across the FSR4 compute pipeline to deliver the performance that you see in those games today. And I think that one of the unique things that we've done is it really, I know we talked about this a little bit, but it was an end-to-end AMD solution. So it was developed on Ryzen and Radeon. It was trained on AMD Instinct products and then deployed on RDNA 4. It takes advantage of the new data types that are a part of the RDNA 4 architecture, because the compute requirements to deliver the level of performance and quality are quite substantial. And those ML ops that came into the RDNA 4 architecture really allow us to drive a much richer experience, much more complicated models, and overall a better output, better capability with FSR4. So I think that's one of the things that, in my mind, is one of the highlights of the RDNA 4 launch. Is we just advanced so significantly our FSR capabilities with this new generation of FSR4. And I think it's just the beginning of what's to come in our in-game performance enhancement technologies.
Good stuff. And actually, I'll stay on that topic since we're on FSR4 now. How is developer adoption going with respect to it? FSR4 with frame gen, obviously a huge boost in performance while maintaining image quality and fidelity. What's that looking like these days? And are there any blockbuster titles coming down the pipe that maybe you could sneak out?
Yeah, I'll clarify for a second, because you said frame gen in there. FSR4 today is ML-based upscaling, and there is still some frame interpolation that's a part of that, but it's not frame extrapolation or multi-frame generation as a part of the algorithm.
Got it.
So just to be clear about what FSR4 is.
Yep.
But I would say developer adoption is very strong. There is a ton of interest. I think that, when you look across our game ecosystem, the partnerships that we have, carrying over from the console world into the Radeon world, give us very broad reach in terms of our ability to interact with game developers and, provide a set of capabilities to those studios. And honestly, we're around the world with game developers, whether they're, regardless of where they're located, we're working very hard to make sure that the next blockbusters that come out are enabled with FSR4 technology, because we think it's just such a significant improvement to the gameplay experience that we want it to be everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Marco, I know we got a couple of more questions relative to supply and pricing and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, this is a great question. One more before we get to that.
Yeah.
Craig just asked a really good question.
Okay.
During the live stream where you guys revealed the 9070 series, there was a quick mention of a 340 watt TDP version of the 9070 XT that was slightly faster, whereas your reference spec is the 304 watts for the 9070. And any clarity on how that's going to play out in the market?
Yeah, look, I think this segues into the next question pretty nicely around, supply and models that are available, all of those things. So our stock TDP for the 9070 XT is 304 watts. What all of our board partners do, I mean, this was a unique launch for us in that, one of the most fundamental things about this launch that was different is we really felt like to be successful in this launch, it had to be a launch that was led by our partners. In the past, we would focus on AMD designed and built cards, and those would be kind of the launch vehicle with cards from all of our partners to follow. But in this case, it was exclusively done through all of our partners. And what that meant was we engaged with our partners much, much earlier. We did co-engineering work for almost a year with our partners to make sure that as we brought RDNA 4 graphics cards to the market, we had completely optimized every aspect of the BOM of the board, the thermal solution, the performance, the components on the board. Because at the end of the day, it's not just the chip that we build that powers these graphics cards or establishes a price point for the card. It's all of the cost engineering and performance engineering that goes into it. And that's the stuff that takes time, and it takes time to get it right. And that's what we did with the RDNA 4 launch, is really focused on from end to end, number of power rails, number of components on the board, put all of the value into the things that change the gaming experience for the end user, as opposed to delivering something that's really suboptimal and doesn't live up to the ability to really deliver great performance at a great price for the gamer. And so I think that's one of the things that's really different in this generation. Okay, so now back to the 304 versus the 340. The fact of the matter is 304 is our stock TDP. Every one of those board partners builds a range of boards. You've got everything from dual fan, triple fan, 2-slot, 2.5-slot designs, lots of LEDs, a few LEDs, bigger thermal solutions, etc. Many of our partners, especially as they go above the intro SEP price, will design to that 340 watt max power spec that's a part of the capabilities of the silicon. It allows them to put more power phases down on the board, pump more power into the chip, put a bigger heat sink and thermal solution on it, and get more performance out of the product. And that's one of the reasons why you see a range of price points out there in the market. Is each of our board partners made different choices around what type of models they thought would sell the best, and how they piece those together, what TDP they target, and kind of corresponding to TDP is all of the things under the covers that lead to incremental BOM cost and things like that to drive more power, better cooling, etc.
Yeah,
got it.
Okay.
Just quickly, Mike is asking a couple of questions. There's zero chance that David answers those,
Right.
So I'll hit you up in the chat later. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, interesting. So yeah, Dave, I guess we should talk about, and I know you just unpacked a little bit about how we arrive at a retail price point through some of the board partners, but what can AMD do? And this is the the burning question from a lot of gamer end users that are just looking for the most cost efficient entry point into your product as possible. What can AMD do to ensure availability of this product at as close to MSRP as you can get it?
Yes.
I have to ask that question. I know you've probably been asked it a couple of times.
No, let's talk about that a little bit. By the way, I fully agree with that sentiment. We designed this card to enable those price points, and I know that that's a really attractive price point for a number of gamers out there. By the same token, there's a number of gamers that want some of the features that are in those higher power, higher price boards as well, and that's okay too. But I think maybe if you take a step back for a second, the launch of RDNA 4 was really a milestone event for our graphics business. The demand was very, very, very strong all around the world. And I think maybe one of the things that's important to address as well is that there are pieces of the graphics business that are far more complicated when it comes to putting product in market than, say, our CPU business. Yeah. On the CPU business, it's simple and straightforward, right? We put a processor in a box, we set a price for that product, we ship it directly into the market, and we control that end to end. With the launch of RDNA 4, we sell an ASIC to our board partners who then have a range of designs that they want to enable, and then the end retailers and e-tailers around the world are the ones that are picking the assortment of cards that they want to carry for day one. We can help in that process, but it's something that we don't honestly directly control. The biggest thing that we can do, and the biggest thing that we are doing, quite honestly, is ramping supply of Navi 48 very, very aggressively. The demand that we saw on day one was really unprecedented and unprecedented across all the price points in the RDNA 4 product portfolio. I think as you look at where we stand today, priority number one is restocking all of our partners, restocking, and by the way, restocking our partners means all the way from retailers and e-tailers back to our add-in board partners, and making sure that they have all the components that they need to build the widest assortment of cards that they can. And I think that, as we look forward in our graphics business throughout the rest of this year, we want to make sure that users are able to buy cards at the prices that they expect to see in market. We're doing everything that we can to make that happen and make sure that both, the retailers and e-tailers, as well as our board partners, are doing their part to help ensure that there's plenty of supply at those price points. And I think as we refill from what happened last week, refill the channel from what happened last week, you'll see more supply coming across not just the opening price points, but across the entire range as we look at the rest of this quarter and Q2 and beyond.
Excellent. Yeah, you do the best you can. That's all you can do, right?
It has been a pretty amazing couple of weeks. Yes, March Madness is truly upon us.
Good stuff.
I mean, you guys really, these last three launches, Strix Halo, the 9950 X3D, and 9070. I mean, from our point of view, the interest from readers has been really high. Is the excitement the same internally? Like, were you guys anticipating sort of these kinds of receptions?
Absolutely. And Marco, I'd say, in our minds, that goes back to the 9800 X3D even last year, where really, it kicked off a series of products that really brought exceptional capabilities and some really exciting moments for end users, whether they're looking for CPUs or GPUs or APUs, some very innovative, very disruptive products that have kind of been in a pretty rapid succession over a couple of months here. So, from our point of view, whether it's AI PCs powered by Strix Halo or our Radeon GPUs or our Ryzen CPUs, we really think we've got a very, very strong portfolio right now. And we think we've got a great set of choices for end users that are looking to upgrade their system, whether that's a notebook or a small form factor desktop or even a new CPU and GPU. We think we've got the most compelling portfolio in the industry right now across the entire range.
Yeah, good stuff. You guys are definitely firing. I did have a question that, I'm sure gets tossed at you once in a while as well, but I'm going to ask this one again anyways. Will AMD someday return to the proverbial flagship, Halo GPU offering? And what sort of market dynamics? I mean, because right now you're a price performance upper mid-range play, right? What sort of market dynamics or technology dynamics, for that matter, are required to make that a reality for you?
Yeah, I think that if you look at our graphics business as a whole and what it's done over the past couple of years, priority number one has really been with this RDNA 4 generation to grow the scale of our graphics business. The truth is, if you look at the market and the segmentation of the market, setting aside dollars, where the units reside, you know, it's $800 and below, $700 and below, $500 and below, right? That is where most people in the world buy GPUs. And when you go back to things like our conversation about FSR4 and in-game technology to help advance the experience, you know, what we are very focused on in our graphics business is ensuring that we have the scale in our graphics business to drive the relationships with game developers, to get the mind share, to integrate that AMD technology into their games, and to have the broadest appeal that we possibly can to you know, as many gamers as we can possibly touch in the ecosystem. I think as you look forward in time, you know, certainly we have aspirations to cover the entire gamut of gaming solutions that are out there in the market. And maybe one day we'll get there, but for now we're focused on really growing scale, driving the developer relationships that come from having a bigger footprint in the graphics market, and that's the near-term focus of our graphics business.
Yeah, makes sense. Hey, that's where the volume is. Can't argue.
You know, and I just want to say something, and this is going to come across very shilly, but I don't care. Seriously, for everybody that wants AMD to sort of release that, you know, super high-end flagship GPU, if you want them to do that, go buy a 9070, right? You have to show the company that you're going to support their GPU efforts, right? It's simple math, right? Go buy a 9070. Make them sell a ton of 97s, and AMD is going to make a bigger one.
Marco, yes, I think we've got a marketing job for you. That's
I was going to say, don't steal my right-hand man, Dave.
No, but that's it, right? You know, AMD's competitors sold a ton of really big 4090s. So what happens? You get a bigger, more expensive 5090, right? That's how the market plays out. So go support the company if you want them to do these, you know, big things.
Couldn't agree more, Marco. Thanks for that.
No problem.
Hey, we should wrap up soon because I know we're at the top of the hour for Dave, but I did want to touch base real quick on Strix Halo because that actually happens to be, I guess it's my favorite, but it's one of the team's favorite, you know, release from you folks this year. Just a really cool product with that huge, you know, unified, I should say, cache memory or DRAM memory. System memory. What am I looking for? Mixing my words. But at any rate, the bottom line is very unique product in the marketplace. With that unified memory architecture. And what are we going to see in terms of new products that might be coming in addition to what we've already seen from the good folks at Asus and HP? Can you give us any hints as to, I guess, what the market adoption is and then what sort of other form factors might come to shape?
Yeah, I think that, by the way, I fully agree with you. I think Strix Halo is such a unique product, and it's something where some of the initial designs and form factors that we're starting to see come into the market now represent some really breakthrough capabilities in pretty disruptive form factors. I think whether that's the small form factor desktop type solutions or a mobile workstation type of product. I mean, you think about what a Threadripper desktop can do. You know, what a Strix Halo does as a mobile device is pretty stunning. And I think that, you know, that's a solution that many developers, creators, et cetera, are going to look at as just a killer device for the types of things that they want to do when maybe they're not, you know, at their desk at home and using that Threadripper. They have stuff they need to do on the go. Strix Halo is a great design for that. So I guess what I'll say is I can't talk about upcoming designs from any of our OEM partners, but I think that there is really a lot of appetite across the ecosystem from our OEM partners and others in just what they can do with a Strix Halo design and the types of applications that it goes into. Because you're right, that unified memory architecture across CPU and GPU, you know, regardless of what you use that for, whether it's for model generation or for inferencing workloads or whatever the case may be, creates a unprecedented level of capability there. And I think you're right. It's a very disruptive product that we still haven't seen the best of what it's going to enable. I think that's yet to come.
And a big honking GPU to boot, integrated GPU as well.
Exactly. It's a really exciting product.
Yeah.
It is a really cool product. Absolutely.
Yeah. We gave it a best of CES for sure. So
thank you.
Question about that. And it's good to see it in market now. And I'm looking forward to the next products we see. We actually took the Asus, what is it? The Flow, right? The X13 Flow for a little test drive, waiting for some systems to get in from HP next. So that'll be fun to kick the tires on those.
Excellent.
Yeah. Well, David, I think we should probably let you off the hook, brother. We've commanded too much of your time today already.
Well, guys, it was great talking to you as always. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for letting me talk a bit about what's been going on in Radeon and Ryzen land.
Our pleasure. It's good to have you. It's we appreciate your time. We appreciate you being patient with some of the questions we were firing at you. Some of them of which were probably put you a little bit on the hot seat, but you're always a good sport about it. So thank you as well. And folks, you can find us on the web at hothardware.com, twitter.com/hothardware, youtube.com/hothardware. Hit thumbs up and subscribe so you get notified when we go live with the 2.5 Geeks live stream or any of our event coverage or reviews or what have you. And until then, Marco, why don't you send us off?
The first thing I'm going to say is if we didn't answer your question live, please put a comment under the stream, right? Help build the channel, get some eyeballs on the video, make sure everybody gets this great information directly from David. We really appreciate him coming on. And if we didn't answer your question, throw it in the actual comment section on the video, and we'll do our best to follow up afterwards. Other than that, just make sure you come by the site. We only cover like a tiny fraction of the information in these streams than what's posted on hothardware.com itself. Come support one of the last independent tech sites on the web. We're really proud of the fact that we've been able to keep it running for all of these years. And other than that, I just want to thank Dave, actually thank both Daves on this stream, and thank everybody that watched. And we'll see you in the next one.
Yeah. David McAfee from AMD. Thanks for stopping by, buddy.